Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our back to school webinar. My name is Sommer Ingram Dean. I am the staff attorney here at the Student Press Law Center, and I'm joined virtually by Mike Hiestand, our senior legal, what is your title? Senior legal consultant.
They call me senior legal consultant these days, yeah.
So I'll turn it over to Mike first.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this, and welcome back to school. We are going to give this a go. We haven't done one of these before, but at least in this format, we've usually done a lot of back to school stuff, but kind of on print and online on our website and stuff. But I'm really glad to have this opportunity to talk about, some of the things that I've been talking to advisors and students about at the beginning of the school year for many, many years. Before we get started, though, I think it's probably worth, if you get nothing else out of this webinar today, I think it's probably worth introducing ourselves here at the Student Press Law Center and telling you a little bit about what we do for those of you that might not be aware of us. And to do that, I'm going to start by going to our website and just giving a quick little tour. All right, can you see that, Sommer? Okay, well, very good. So the first thing I'll mention, I mean, the SPLC has been around since 1974. We are a nonprofit organization. Our whole reason for being in business is really to provide free legal help and information to high school and college student journalists and advisors around the country. My specific job and Summer's specific job here at the center is to provide legal information to answer your questions. We receive questions on pretty much every sort of media law issue that's out there. Libel and copyright and access to records and meetings and things. But the number one reason that people have called us, and the number one reason they've always called us here at the SPLC, is censorship. And so what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about what to do when when censorship takes place. But one of the ways that one of the things I want to kind of let you know is how you get in touch with us. You see the little legal help thing. There's a couple different ways to do it. Just go to the Ask for Legal Help button. There's really three ways to get in touch with us. You can either schedule a phone call, and this is a really easy thing. You just come, and there's little slots you can pick up. And Summer and I will have a chance to chat with you. Or you can go and submit an email through our website. Or if things are really, if it's a really urgent emergency sort of situation, you can give us a call, and our number here is listed here. We don't, unfortunately, man the hotline during the weekends, but during the week, if something if you need to talk to somebody in a hurry, you usually can do that. But yeah, there's lots of different ways to get in touch with us, and you're not bothering us. I mean, that's what we do here. Do know we stay pretty busy. I think we did a kind of an estimate a few years ago, just about how many potential clients we have. And we figured we probably have in the neighborhood of about 250,000 student journalists and advisors and folks that give us a call. Luckily, you're not all calling us with problems, but do know that sometimes things do get a little bit busy here. So if you can give us more time rather than less time, for example, if you'd like us to read a story, or if you have some copyright questions about a yearbook theme that you're looking to have answered, give us as much leeway as you can. All right. The other thing, let's see if I can get back to our screen here. Okay, we're getting better at this. So the other thing I want to talk about is, as I said, the number one reason that people call us at the SPLC is censorship. And so one of the things that I always tell advisors and students they need to do at the beginning of the year is really kind of get a game plan in place for what happens should censorship or should some other controversy come to your newsroom. And you want to do that when things are calm. At the beginning of the year is a great time to sit down and really talk about what the role of the advisor is and what the role of student journalists are. When that happens, because they are very different roles. And at least for for advisors, I mean, it's really important, I think, again, when things are calm, when you're not, telling students this is what you need to do now, it's important to talk to your students about, if something happens, you need to understand that I, as an advisor, am an employee. I legally, actually, advisors are in the same legal position as the principal. They are school officials, they're school administrators. And it's important, I think, for everybody to understand that. Because, when stuff happens and when things, the heat gets turned up, very often you find that those roles do come into play, and that the advisor all of a sudden is reminded by their principal or by their superintendent that they are an employee, and that they need to do their work as an employee, which is unfortunately very often kind of at odds with what an advisor is, wants to do as an advisor. I mean, an advisor is there because they love you. I mean, they're doing work that they believe is important. They believe in student voices. They believe in student press, and they are on your side. But they're also an employee, and so sometimes those those roles conflict. We do have on our website. We'll go back to that now. Oops. Somehow. I'm having a hard time picking this up here. Okay, well, I'll just talk about it. So on our website, there is a link for tips for advisors. And I'm not going to talk about all the different tips, but I'm talking about number one. And then I'm going to talk about, for students, there's also a checklist for responding to censorship. And again, I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm going to talk about the first one because those are the most important. But in terms of the role of the advisor, when censorship happens, it's always important to know that your students are really the ones that need to take the lead on this. It's a student publication. It is student voices that are trying to be protected. And it's really important that students understand that, if the principal or if a superintendent comes down and tries to censor the publication, students, not the advisor, again, the advisor is an employee, students are the ones that need to take the lead in contesting that censorship. Students need to be the one at the, when it's important to make the phone calls to media to let them know what's happening. Students need to be the one to let parents know. Students need to be the one to contact the SPLC. You don't want, after a censorship situation has started, you don't want, as an advisor, to be telling your students, you need to call the SPLC now. That can be looked at as insubordination in many cases, challenging the school district. These are things that students need to know now when things are calm. So you need to let them know, and students, you need to know that we exist. I'd much rather have you calling me so I can tell you this is what you need to do. You need to contact local reporters. We need to look at case law. We need to kind of get a game plan in place, as opposed to your advisor doing that, because it's just not a comfortable situation, and in many cases it's a dangerous legal situation for your advisor to be in, to be the one giving you that sort of help. The other thing that students need to realize, because I see this happen all the time, is that very often when a censorship situation or some sort of controversy comes into play, the advisor is told specifically, I think this is lousy, but it happens, the advisor is told, don't tell your students, this is something that you need to keep to yourself. Don't tell your students that I've told you, that this can't go forward or anything like that. And so students and advisors are in a lousy situation in that they are, again, because they are employees, they have to sometimes do things they don't want to do, but they are having to keep things from students. And, it gets very uncomfortable. And so I would much rather, that students call me up and let me kind of be the, they'll call me the bad guy, but I'm the good guy, and try and walk you through kind of what's worked. I've been here for close to 30 years now. We've got a pretty good system for how to contest censorship, and so we can talk a lot about that. In terms of students, the number one sort of suggestion that I can have for students is just the importance of practicing good journalism. I mean, there's, knowing the law and doing a bunch of other things on the list we can get to, but beyond everything else, the best sort of censorship protection that you can have, and that I just desperately am looking for, is good journalism. If you put together a story that you are proud to stand up and defend, and take to other media and to make your case, more often than not, we're going to have a positive outcome. I mean, things have changed. When I started here back in, I guess it was 1989, the reality was that a student newspaper was one of the few vehicles that students had to get their message out. And so when a student media was censored, we had to fight it tooth and nail, because it was either it was going to be published there, or it probably wasn't going to be published. Obviously in 2018 that's changed, and where you are putting out good, competent journalism that you're proud of, whether it's published in the student newspaper or whether we take it to some other place. I mean, there are means for getting your story out there, which is right. That's the bottom line. That's what we're looking to do. So, but I can only help you with that if your journalism is good. Yesterday, in fact, I got a phone call from a student that's working on this blockbuster story. She found out that there's, kind of a Me Too situation going on, and maybe some cover-up by administrators. And she called and said, we got this going on, but I don't think they're going to let me publish it. And my words to her, as they've always been, is that, what? Your only sort of role is to determine whether or not it's news. Once you've determined that story is news, you cover it, and you cover it just as well as you possibly can. As I was telling the student, just do good reporting. Make sure that you're reporting only what you know. Make sure that you got good sources. There's a whole list of things that you do when you're putting out good journalism, as you guys know. But if you can put out a story that you're proud of, and that you're able to stand behind that story, we're going to get that story out somehow. And very often, if school officials try and censor it, it's going to be a much bigger story than it would have been otherwise. So practicing good journalism is pretty much the number one thing on the list. Before I turn it over to Sommer, who's going to talk about some copyright issues that are coming up, and that's probably a good thing to line up, get a handle on at the beginning of the year. I thought I'd also talk about kind of the role of, again, going back to advisors being employees, just the need of advisors when we're dealing with confidential sources. That's another kind of thing that comes up that can get you trapped pretty quickly. When we're talking about confidential sources, again, advisors are employees. It's real important. We've always suggested to students that, if you're looking to work on a story involving confidential sources, confidential information, as sad as it is, because it's certainly nice to talk to advisors with stories like that are somewhat tricky, but it's real important that you not clue your advisor in as to who your source is, because they are employees. They are sometimes in a position, if you tell them something, particularly if it's something involving illegal conduct. Perhaps you have talked to a student that is willing to talk to you about a story you're doing on drug use at school, and maybe they're either a drug user at school, or they're selling drugs or something like that. The minute that you tell your advisor that you're working on the story and that you know who this person is, your advisor very often is going to have a legal obligation to go to her principal or his principal and let them know that, I know that this is happening place. It's a legal obligation they have. So it's important, I think, if you're looking to do that, to use confidential sources, make sure you keep them out of it. That's also a good time maybe to give us a call. We can kind of talk to you about some of the nuances and things you want to be thinking about when you're using confidential sources. I think that's it. Like I said, go to our website. We have lots of information there. You can dig in a lot deeper, but those are the main things, kind of as you get started in the year. So, Sommer, I'll turn it over to you for information on, some pretty troubling stuff that's coming in line in terms of copyright stuff.
Thanks, Mike. So I just want to focus on a few issues about copyright law that we tend to see frequently here at the SPLC. The first is sort of a basic question that we tend to get a lot about who owns the copyright to work created by a student journalist? And the answer to that is generally a student will retain the copyright to his own work. So whether that's a photograph or a story or a blog post, the student will retain the copyright to that and can exercise all the rights of a copyright holder. And that's regardless of whether the student has used their own equipment or school equipment to write their story or produce their multimedia package or whatever it may be. On our website, we do have a model copyright agreement that you can have students sign to sort of minimize confusion that may come up in that area. And basically that leaves the copyright with the student, but it provides what we call sort of a long-term license for the student media organization to use or reprint their story or their photo or whatever it may be. The next thing I want to talk about is something we've been seeing more and more frequently here, which are these automatic auto-generated copyright infringement notices. So we are seeing situations where copyright owners have gotten creative and they are embedding codes or putting metadata that's often invisible to the naked eye into their images or into whatever work it is before it's uploaded online. Then they're able to use these computer programs to search the internet and find when their work has been reproduced without permission. And so oftentimes when these programs run and they get a hit on whatever their work is, they auto-generate these letters and send them to the copyright infringer. And so I just think it's really important for you guys to know that just because you're student media, you're not exempt from that. We've been getting a lot of calls and requests about how to handle those sort of things. And so a lot of times also these letters are demanding money. And so I just kind of want to go through some things that you can do to minimize this. Obviously, you can always contact us by calling us or contacting us through our online legal request form. But the first thing you'll want to do if you receive one of these letters is just verify that it's not a scam, because those things do happen as well. And once you verify that it's something that's accurate, and we can also help you with that, probably the first thing you'd want to do is remove the infringing material. So that could be as simple as taking down, the photo from the news site or whatever it is that you've been notified that you're infringing upon. Oftentimes, if you remove the material, that's shown as good faith, and that can work in your favor in the long run. I won't go into too much depth about this right now, but you can also look and see if you have a fair use claim. Fair use is basically a doctrine that says if you're using a work in sort of a transformative way, then you're not infringing on copyright. And again, that's something that we can help you determine here at SPLC. The one thing you don't want to do is ignore the letter. So something we often advise doing is that you can respond in writing, letting the claimant know that you're working at a student publication, you have no money. It's not a legal defense, but it may get them to sort of back down a little bit. And it's also important to know that even if you do end up having to pay, it won't necessarily be the amount that they're demanding in the letter. So a lot of things that we see, or a lot of ways people get sort of caught in this copyright trap, are by doing things just like simply copying and pasting from the internet or downloading images from Google. It's important to know that just because it's available on Google does not mean that you can freely use it. It's also important to note that just because you give credit to a person or a website for getting your image or quote or whatever from that place, that doesn't mean you're not infringing on the copyright, because copyright law is concerned with consent rather than attributing it to whoever you got it from. So sometimes it can be something as simple as asking for permission to use the image. You can pay for a license. You can look for things that are in the public domain, which are things that are really old, like Shakespeare, or like the Mona Lisa, things where the copyright has expired. So I think that's all I wanted to go over as far as that goes. Just something to definitely keep an eye out for, and to be vigilant about as you guys start your school year off. Mike, can you think of anything else?
Yeah, this is really, as some were saying, I mean, this is something that I think we're just seeing the beginning of these automatic automatically generated copyright demand letters, because the technology is there. I mean, it's so simple, and there's just so much potential money involved for folks. You know, it's like a Google search. They just search the web to find out who has used this photo that has been taken, and then it's all pretty much automated from there. They just, you know, a button gets pushed and you get a letter that says, you know, you pay us $750 or, you know, more oftentimes. So one thing we are suggesting, and it's a pain in the behind, I know, but is now is a good time to do a kind of a copyright audit of your website, and going through. I mean, going back is as far as you need to. Well, going back at least 3 years. That's the statute of limitations. But I'd go back ideally like 4 or 5 even. But looking for copyrighted images, and pulling those things down. If you aren't absolutely certain that you have, you know, that you created the image yourself or that you have permission to use it, pull it down, because there's unfortunately there's no hiding. This technology makes clear there's no hiding anymore. They will find out if you are using you know, an image that you don't have the right to use. And as Sommer said, I mean, there's a few things you can do, but you know, the bottom line is if you're using an image that you don't have the right to use, you're on the hook, and those fines can be hefty. So, but yeah, I think that's about it. Just a reminder to make sure, mark our website and keep our contact information handy.
You can also follow us on Twitter and on our Facebook page and Instagram. We're uploading a lot of social media stuff these days too. So
yeah. So, but yeah, have a wonderful school year, and yeah, hopefully we don't hear from you.
All right, thank you guys.
Bye-bye.